everyone, welcome to our studio launch. I am Zipho Majova and next to me is Keshree Alwar. Keshree, hello.
Hi Zipho.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, I have to say, yes.
Yeah, would you say, you're feeling a bit better now that it's day 2 of the launch?
I am much better.
Yeah.
I think it's been quite exciting, quite entertaining,
Yeah.
and a very fun, interactive 2 days scheduled. Definitely.
Nice. Keshree, there's always this narrative that CEOs are born, not made. Some say CEOs are born and made. So I'm not really interested in the semantics.
Yes.
My biggest issue is the made part. I want to know what are the components that have made Keshri who she is. So the person behind what we see today.
Yes. Okay, well, there's a lot to tell, so maybe if I start.
Yeah.
So Keshri in the CEO role, I've got a finance background.
Okay.
So finance to education, it's quite an interesting transition.
Yeah.
And I've been part of the Novus Holdings Group, which basically I was the CFO. And we moved to acquire what is now Maskew Miller Learning. So I was very, very much involved with the people in the transition, and I got to know the team.
Yeah.
And it kind of fell into place quite nicely, where I was able to transition into the CEO role eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it was quite an exciting journey. If I think about where I come from, and why for me it's quite important to be part of this business and to be able to shape education and to change the narrative. I go back to thinking of how I've learned and my learning journey.
Yeah.
And part of that was, in school, my sister and I remember we used to share a textbook.
Okay.
We shared a study guide.
Oh.
A physics or math study guide. Our parents would buy one and we'd interchange between the subjects. And for me at the time, it didn't appear as if it was a challenge. We just work around it. And if I think back to that story, I realize now, it was actually a situation where we should have had, resources for both of us. It's having access to education, it's just for me, resources is extremely important. I mean, we were able to overcome some of those challenges.
Yeah.
But for me to be in a position to actually create and place meaningful and impactful resources in front of the learner is extremely important. But more importantly, access and inclusivity to educational materials. So now I can fix that. And I can help address this, be part of the solution. And there's many other stories that I kind of try to I always try to think about how do I contribute what I've learned to my role and help carry it forward. And even with technology, I grew up in a time where not every household had a computer or Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But I think I can draw from a lot of my personal experiences to try to put it into what we can do to change, to contribute positively to the ecosystem, the educational ecosystem. Rather.
Yeah. You speak a lot about the challenges, that you went through sharing books with your sister. You speak about access. You speak about inclusivity. Do you think that has influenced your vision for MML and how you kind of lead?
I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
I think that for me, it's about creating not just any resource, but the right resource that supports the learner and, more importantly, the teacher in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing. Since I've basically been in the seat now for just under 2 years.
Wow.
But of course, we've transitioned into Maskew Miller Learning. We've rebranded ourselves.
Yeah.
Just under 3 years now. And we've been looking at creating innovative solutions, but that have an impact. And I think that's what's quite important. And if we look at how do we not just create the resource, but cater to the different learning styles, the different languages spoken by children or in their homes. So we've been trying to play around with how do you cater to an individual learning journey. Our textbook material covers quite an array of, let's say, resources, but it caters to a general schools market, not to an individual.
Yeah.
And adding digital or increasing our digital offering is more catering towards a more personalized learning. And that's quite important. It's not just personalized learning, but access. And I think access is quite important to me because through digital means you can access more. And it would be good to talk about some of the tools that we've created to enable access to education.
Of course. No, we will get to that. You say that this transition has taken a little less under 3 years.
Yes.
So we've transitioned from the Pearson era and to now being under the Novus Group. What would you say was the key major reason for rebranding? Why the rebrand?
Well, I think being 100% local owned or proudly South African brand, I think it has to go back to we were reclaiming our heritage, our South African heritage.
Nice.
Of course, we go back to Maskew Miller, which is over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was quite important to create our own identity as a South African brand that understands and caters to, let's say, local needs. It's a very there's a lot we can do in this country, and I think being able to understand it better and going through it, and that's where I draw a lot from my personal experience, actually knowing the challenges that our children and our teachers and parents face. For me, it's important to just reposition ourselves as a company that understands and can cater to local needs.
So, Keshri, we're sitting in this amazing studio, having a podcast. I know it's one of the things that you guys have introduced as MMR, but perhaps take us through, what that transition looked like practically, in addition, to all the things that I've mentioned.
Yes. So basically, post rebranding, we've gone through the stage of trying to identify ourselves, and reclaim our heritage, but at the same time to diversify our offering and to cater to a wider market. Of course, we do cater to the schools right now through our print textbooks, and we a very trusted, reputable print publisher.
Yeah.
But to get to individual learning, it was important to start to use innovation to develop new products and materials, and to start to kind of increase the talent pool to be able to use technology in the classroom or develop technology solutions.
Yeah.
But if I step back as to how one of the components was also to reinvigorate our team, to rebrand our titles, to define what it looks like. We've renovated offices, so the studio that you're sitting in today was
amazing.
part of that. And we've expanded our digital offering far beyond what we could have imagined more than 2 years ago when we started. So it's been a lot. We've of course we keep our teachers, our learners as supported as we can.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to make sure that they know they trusted the previous brand, but they still retain that trust too. So keeping them along was quite important, and managing stakeholder expectations.
Yeah.
So if I sit here where we were just about over 2 years ago and where we are now, we're a completely different company. And refocused, innovative, and we've looked at our values again, and we're trying to dream very big. But it's to cater to the real challenges in South Africa.
As I listen to all of these amazing things that you've done to accommodate the transition, the question that sits at the back of my mind is, how are you then able to maintain the momentum of delivery and innovation throughout all of these components of rebranding?
Yes. So we've invested a lot in technology, integrating technology into our business to improve efficiencies and to also, help us to identify quicker solutions.
Yeah.
So going on a journey of, delivering technology products means you need to invest and fully embrace technology throughout the business, throughout your business processes, and look for ways of developing innovative products.
Yeah.
So increasing the use of technology in the business, as well as our talent pool, is very important. So we've been upskilling to make sure that we've got the best talent in the country that truly understand the pedagogical aspects and the learners to be able to deliver or create the material that's needed. So it's been quite a not a long journey, but an exciting journey. But it's quite important that we keep projects running continuously, and we adapt the solution, because it's not always going to be the right solution at the start.
Yeah.
We've also ventured and increased our partnerships. We work with we've got an artificial intelligence company that we work with that's part of the group as well.
Okay.
So we've got very good partners to be able to test our thinking and to get us to where we want to be. And we're taking risks.
Yeah.
And with risks, you're not always going to get it right. But what's important is we have the right team to take us forward.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway as a CEO.
Yes.
What are you most proud of in terms of the rebranding and now the official launch as MML?
I'm really proud that we were able to create our own identity. I think that's quite important. It gave us, we've relied on our legacy and we've got a very good standing reputation, but to define who we are and re-establish that credibility in the market under Maskew Miller Learning was quite important. But at the same time, I'm really proud of our people. And I think we've come a really long way. The talent that sits in this building, in not just this building, amongst all of our people is extremely, the possibilities with them is just endless.
Absolutely.
So for me, the resilience, the creativity, the innovation and the passion is what I feel. I'm proud of my people for that and for standing with me, a finance person in education, but to coming along on this journey with me.
Okay.
I know I'm not alone, but I'm most proud of them.
Nice. I wanna speak about digital transformation. So we know that it's a buzzword, in the world, and I think South Africa in general, and it has been for quite some time. And I see that MML has jumped onto that and kind of become the pioneer of that.
Yes.
What would you say was the reason for kind of jumping and adding that to your vision, or why you feel that it's important that MML also hops onto the vision of digital transformation?
Yes. Well, Zippo, it's changing so fast, so we have to continuously keep the pace. I think as a business, we need to be able to move in line with how the world is moving. We know South Africa is not ready for fully digital, transforming digitally.
Yeah.
But for us to continuously be ahead of the curve means we need to start to cater or equip the current generation with the right skills and confidence to be able to, let's say, operate in this new century or the 21st century. I think the world is changing. Artificial intelligence is becoming more intelligent, as you can say. It's the pace is too fast for us to be at the back end of it all. So for me, it was important that we accelerate our digital strategy. We look at new innovative solutions constantly, but we help equip the people around it to support the country and the ecosystem, the educational ecosystem, to move slowly or at the right pace at least, with the rest of the world. So what we've been seeing is, it's about equipping our business, equipping the people, our customers, our stakeholders rather, to be ready, and our children, which is the most important thing in my view, our children to be able to function in a very changed world.
Yeah. You say that South Africa is not ready to kind of fully transform digitally, but it's important that MML plays a role in accelerating that.
Yes.
Now, I think parallel to that, we cannot have a conversation about digital transformation without mentioning the digital divide in South Africa, which is fully the reason why we can't just wake up and fully be, pioneers of digital transformation. Now, tell us why it was important for you to partner with the DBE in order to equip, because you mentioned equipping, in order to equip some of our teachers.
Yes. So basically, in order for people for the children to be able to embrace technology, it's important for the teachers to be equipped with the right skill set.
Yes.
And to be able to, that's how you can harness those skills in the classroom. So we've been working towards, we've developed an ICT course which is catered for teachers.
Okay.
And we've partnered with the Department of Basic Education, as you've mentioned, to roll out this training to as many teachers as possible. And to date, we've trained about 5,000 teachers to help them embrace technology, essentially. But it's quite necessary, and we'll continue. AI literacy is important, and that needs to be the next step. But if we go back to the challenges, not every classroom still has a computer. Not every household has a computer. So we've looked at ways of offering solutions that are accessible to the majority. And one of those is our innovative AI tool, Masky.
Yes.
Masky, of course, available on WhatsApp, means it can get to the majority. So if you don't have a computer, you most have a cell phone, most have a WhatsApp. So that was one of the means to get it to everyone. But be used by teachers, learners, and parents.
I'm glad you mentioned Masky. In addition to the 2,000 products, TVET expansion, robotics, programming, and that's only but a little from the list. I think it's impressive. I think it's commendable. Tell us a little bit about Masky, what it means, the product offering, and just why Masky?
Why Masky? Of course, so we started the Masky journey about 2 years ago with artificial intelligence, creating our own artificial intelligence tool. And if we go back to the thinking, we've been around the block. We understand education. We learn from the people around us, of course. But take that understanding of the curriculum and the material and the learner and teacher in the classroom and combine that with the skill set of an artificial intelligence firm, which is probably one of the greatest minds in the country. Combine those two to create something that can cater to the burning need in South Africa and for a local context. So Masky was kind of born from the various minds being put together to work on a platform accessible to all and to start with the teacher in mind, to help them to create assessments, expand to the learner to practice questions, but do it at their own pace. And then now Masky has grown substantially throughout subject offering, content offering. Content is all available on WhatsApp for downloaders, of course. You can engage with Masky. And I think one of the critical subjects that, of course, we have to focus on is mathematics. So Masky is now your personal maths tutor for grades 7 to 12, which is a very, very critical and complex phases. So it's basically Masky is able to engage with the learner. Of course, not engage, let me use beep. You have to be safe around how learners and teachers and parents use artificial intelligence. But Masky can be used to help children with their homework. They're struggling with a problem, they can submit the question to Masky, and Masky gives them worked solutions, but it also adjusts to their level. So what's important is to cater to different learning styles. So Masky was essentially to use technology to get to the majority, but to then offer an individual learning experience or journey.
In the midst of all these brilliant innovations, Masky, digital transformation, AI, the maths agenda, or rather the STEM agenda, still needs to continue. There's a lot of moving parts in the education system in South Africa. How do you then continue to drive the vision of the STEM agenda, maths and science, amongst all of these other things?
Well, we've been trying to create solutions firstly to be the right materials used by the learners. It's quite complex to teach and learn maths and science, of course. So we looked at using innovation and our content expertise to create new material. We're going to launch our new Crack the Maths Code series, which is a study guide for currently starting off with grades 10 to 12. And it's supposed to be, it's different. It's to more questions, more engagement required from learners, but linked to Masky Maths Tutor. So it comes with a personal tutor. But I think it's about continuously evaluating and creating materials that can be used for improving learning outcomes. And that's why the start was to go through add maths tutor to Masky, focus on maths as a priority, create new material that can be used better by the learners, and of course support all interventions to improve maths learning outcomes in the country. So we're very much involved in many partnerships where we can start to do more to ultimately provide the right resources to children and keep maths alive, because I mean we know the reality is it's dying. As we know, I mean we've seen that maths is a subject that's being dropped off by many schools. I think recently it was around about 400 schools no longer offer maths as a subject. So it's been quite it is an important area for us to continue to create materials and resources specifically to help keep it alive, essentially. So we'll continue to push this agenda through initiatives and partnerships where we can to make sure that there's a presence and focus around maths. We've recently attended many events as well where we could hear the what's changing in the maths educational environment and find a way to support that better.
I want to go back to the beginning of our conversation where you drew from your upbringing. You spoke a lot about, inclusion. So I want you to tell us, what does mother tongue-based bilingual education mean practically, and why is this so critical in South Africa?
So I think it's quite important that learners, they grasp concepts better when it's in their home language. And I think multilingualism, I mean, that's a reality. You need to be able to offer materials that cater to all languages. And if I look and I'm not an educator, but my understanding of the system is you learn in your mother tongue for the first few years of your life. And then you still have to learn to read, right? And then you have to now learn even more complex concepts in a language different from your own. So I think it's quite difficult to navigate, this aspect being with many languages spoken in the country. But I think it's very necessary to offer materials and learning in the classroom in the child's mother tongue and help them transition as they move fully towards English being nationally spoken, internationally spoken.
And then how does your commitment to publishing in 11 languages, but now I hear that you guys are also kind of penetrating the sign language space, which is great, I think. How does that commitment support learning equity, but also alongside ensuring that the AI space that you guys are also dabbling into is kind of linguistically inclusive?
Yes. So Zipo, we've already got resources in 11 languages. Of course, sign language we're adding. It's on the roadmap to eventually also cater to that market. But for me, it was quite important that when we create new material, we try to do as many languages as possible. The reality is, as you get to some of the languages, the less spoken languages, finding resources to create those materials is also not as easy as one would think. But for me, it's important to create in as many as we can to cater to all. In terms of using artificial intelligence, through Masky, we currently we provide English content, but we're adding more languages so that the content is worksheets in the form of worksheets is available for more. And we'll continue to look at how we can cater to the various languages spoken in the country and children being able to learn in both, because I think the code switching is very common, and I think Maski Tutor can cater to some of that right now. But for me, it's important to always ensure that every child has what they need.
So ECD, another buzz term in South Africa, but also a very critical space. I think I read somewhere that the first 1,000 days of a child are important, but also the first few years are extremely critical to the brain development, of a child. What impact are you hoping that MML will make in that space, or at least the ECD foundational learning?
Okay. Well, Zipo, being a new mother, well, I won't say new, but mother to just
Congratulations.
Thank you. Just under 2 years old. So to me, still will always be my baby.
Yeah.
But I think it made it a bit more real as well because, you know, he has access to resources. Not every child has access to those same resources. But there's a lot we can do in the space to equip not just the child but the parents as well to be able, and I think that's what's important in the 0 to the start of your life. There's many people taking care of the child.
Absolutely.
So they need to be able to do so with the right, let's say, they need to be able to do so having the right support in place. But what we're trying to do at Maskew Miller Learning is to increase our offering, to create more resources from early childhood years so they have access to reading material as a start. The other aspects that are missing, we're looking at using other vehicles to be able to provide more towards ECD centers. We have our own creche within the group as well.
Nice.
So to help to start to do more beyond our educational resource material. But it's important that every child has the right start in life, the best start in life. And I think for me it's a good step for us to start. It's been one of those things where we should have focused on this phase a long time ago because it's extremely crucial in the development, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And it puts them at the back foot if they're not equipped with what they need from the start. And it's various things. So I think it's between material, food, just knowledge of how to take care of what they need.
Yeah.
But yes, that's something that for me as a mother, I think I can see how having the right or being equipped with having the right support mechanisms in whatever form it is valuable in ensuring that the child can succeed.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to the multilingualism part, and I know you touched on it, but why do you think that's also equally critical in the ECD space?
Yes. So I think, a lot of the materials are available are not in many languages, especially in the English. As children at that age, there's more English material available, but there's also no resources available, no local content, no localized resources. So if I go back, we should be able to cater to South African needs, and to do that means start from ECD, where materials are created in multiple languages, and we've already started. So we hope to release some of that material soon, but it's necessary for them to find material that's relatable, and that they can understand, and in their own language. Amazing.
I want to wrap up the conversation, but I want to speak a little bit about social impact. I know it's a key focus of Novus Foundation.
Yes.
Can you please share a little bit about what you guys are doing to impact our communities?
Okay, so we very proudly we support our communities through many of our initiatives, but one in particular that I think is worth mentioning is Maskew Miller Learning has had a fully funded trust. So we have the Marang Education Trust, as it was known by, which has been since inception since 2008. It's been supporting the schools and teachers through various programs, but we've basically reviewed the trust, and we're taking it in a more bolder strategic direction. It's now the Novus Foundation. So it's known as the Novus Foundation since very recently. And the aim is to do more throughout the educational ecosystem, to offer more training, teacher training and development to equip our teachers, to offer ECD materials and resources where we can, to cater to the entire educational ecosystem as far as possible. So the focus of the foundation is to scale and impact, and also align with the digital transformation in the country. So it's to equip them with the skills that they need to function in the 21st century.
Yeah. I think this conversation has been informative, but I think last question for me is, as a CEO and as a leader, what lasting impacts or legacy do you want, MML to leave?
That's a good question. I think if we can be known as a company that truly understands the needs of our children, of the education ecosystem, and cater to that need. I think solving for the next generation and setting up the next generation for survival and just for success. For me, I'd like to leave a bit of that behind about making a difference, an impact in this space, or continuing impact in this space.
Thank you very much, Keshri. This conversation has been really informative. I certainly can't wait to see what Masky and all the other amazing innovations will be continuing to do out there. And to you guys, thank you so much. We shall see you next time, same place.